Yes, we can do it. Hmm. Good evening, everyone. Namaste. Let us sit straight. The body, neck, and the head in a straight line, while the shoulders are relaxed. The straight posture is maintained by the effort of the hip. The hips, you don't let them slouch, so it allows you to sit straight. Other than that effort, the rest of the body is very relaxed. Eye, mouth, tongue, jaw muscle, shoulders, hand, chest, abdominal muscle should be relaxed. The toes, sometimes we keep moving the toes. Toes can be relaxed. Feel the straight posture. Relax the back of the neck. Relax your eyes, mouth, and jaw. Shoulders and hands relax. Abdominal muscles relax. The toes in your feet relax. Straight posture with relaxed periphery. An attitude of listening. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu. Sahanau Bhunaktu. Sahaviryan Karavavahai. तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सत् In the last class, we discussed two questions. There was a discussion about deities. One person asked, do we have to meditate on the various divine forms that are in Hinduism, even if one is not attracted to, or does not find the tuning, or one is not able to relate with the idea being born in a different culture. So we had that. That is a beautiful, useful question. This is a challenge that I come across with many of sorry. This is a challenge that I come across with many of my students from abroad, from other cultures. So we did address that question, but I would like to add some more points to what we discussed. First, we need to understand that we are not losing anything by not being able to relate with the various divine forms that you see in the Hindu culture from India. The same devatas, when represented in other cultures, they look like people from their culture. You have the devatas represented in the Japanese culture, in the Southeast Asia. There are some representations of Vishnu unearthed from ancient Greece, from Egypt. There was also some Indian forms comparable to Hindu forms unearthed from the Mayan civilization. But the representations are different. The concept is similar, but the visual aspect is slightly different in many places. But the concept, all the visuals hover around the same concept. For example, Ganesha, elephant head, is the same thing in India and also in Japan. 4 arms, Vishnu, and then the 7-hooded snake is the same concept in India and Greece or the Celtic or Egyptian. So we have this comparable certain concepts, but the visual need not be the same. This is one aspect. Another one, if you look at the Vedic religion and the history of it, the invocation is usually in a sacred geometric formula called a yantra or in a fire altar. At the base of the fire altar also they draw a yantra. And then there is this altar, fire altar, the Homa Kunda they say. They invoke the fire and then they invoke the deity with mantras and visualization, and there is a process of inviting the divine, invoking it, sustaining it, and then making the offering it and sending the divine back. There is an entire procedure. And then there is a Rigvedic priest, there is a Yajurvedic priest, Samavedic priest, and there is Atharva Veda sometimes. So the various priests who specialize in various aspects of the worship of the deity, they come together and then they perform a yajna. And there is no form. Nobody is drawing any form. If you go, for example, for Bhagavati Seva and other things in Kerala Sampradaya, you will see only yantras. There will be some picture that is mostly for a sentimental value and for an emotional value. If you go to the temple, agamic temples, there will be a deity, a huge form, but in front of the deity there will be a yantra. All the main offerings will be made to the yantra. In Devi temples, there will be a Shri Yantra. In Shiva temple, there will be a Shivalinga, some other yantra, maybe Shiva yantra. Also, under that form, there is a yantra of that deity, mostly. So, the point is the energy. If you read in Agamas, in all the texts that deal with Upasana, there will be a description of the form. Okay. So there will be dhyana shlokas. In dhyana shloka means the composition that is helpful for using in meditating on the form of the deity. Right. So when we do that, there is a stula dhyanam. If you take Mantra Shastra book, there will be stula dhyanam. Meditation on the gross form. Gross means not in a negative sense. The sense concrete form. Meditation on the visual concrete form. Then the next is meditation on the subtle form. Then Sukshma Dhyanam, right? So it is there, Stula Dhyanam and Sukshma Dhyanam. And then there is also meditation on the knowledge aspect of the mantra. For example, you can see a very nice description of this in a text written by Sri Bhaskaracharya for Sri Vidya. He talks about the Panchadashakshari mantra. He talks about that there is a Sri Vidya mantra, Panchadashakshari mantra. He talks about the gross form meditation, meditating on the first part. The Panchadashakshari mantra is the 15-letter mantra. First 5 mantra is called as the Vakbhava Kutam, the face, basically, speech and other faculties. The face up to the neck. Then from the neck to the navel is Madhya Kutam, the central part. Then the Shakti Kutam, the part of the energetic or the Shakti in sense here is power. Part is the bottom from navel to the feet of the Devi. So you visualize when you are chanting the mantra in the first 5 letters, you visualize the face and then you visualize, you come to from top to bottom. Shakti Kutam, Madhya Kutam, Vakbhava Kutam, Madhya Kutam, Shakti. So you visualize like that. Now it also has a Sukshma and there is a Kundalini Rupa. The god, you can meditate on your Kundalini as the goddess, and then the first part of the mantra you are doing from Muladhara to Anahata. And the second part you are doing from Anahata to Agnya. The third part you are doing from Agnya to Sahasrara. The three Granthis and all that. Then there is the Vedantic meaning for the mantra. You visualize the creation, sustenance, and the destruction, the three parts. The same comes to Namah Shivaya mantra. You know that Panchakshari or the Shiva's mantra, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. So if you read Sri Ramalinga Vallalar and also in the Agamas, it is used as a aid for meditating on the cosmic truth, the truth of the reality, the truth of this universe and of the self, the relationship between the divine and the self, and the oneness between the divine and the self. How the one appears as many, the entire philosophy of Shaiva Siddhanta is meditated upon in the Namah Shivaya mantra. It can also be used as a tool for meditating on the Vedantic Mahavakya through the Namah Shivaya mantra. So, there is a Sukshma Rupa, there is a subtle meditation where you are meditating on the five elements. Na is earth, Ma is water, like that. You meditate on the five elements. In She is fire, Va is air, and Ya is Akasha, Namah Shivaya. You meditate on the Panchabhutas, the Lord in the form of the five elements. That is also there. And then you can combine that with the chakras. That is one meditation. So a mantra is meditated upon in various ways. A mantra represents an aspect of reality, a tattva. A mantra represents a principle or a truth, a tattva. Okay. So the whole point of meditating using mantra as a prop is to go from the word to the meaning. The word is not the word and the meaning are not separate. They are eternally associated if it is a Vedic mantra, because it is revealed at the source of creation, from the source. So when we say Om, Om is Ishvara in the form of sound. And also the meaning of Om gives you the vision of Ishvara. Tasya Vachaka Pranavaha. His word is Om. How to? Tad Japaha, Tad Artha Bhavanam. You have to chant it and to meditate on its, contemplate on its meaning. Right? So, the practice of mantra is not simply repetition of formula of a mystic word to energy work and all that they say. It's not just that. It is supposed to lead us from the word to the meaning. That is the point of mantra sadhana. The same thing applies to Narayana. There is a meaning. So one need not be stuck with the divine form. One does not have any attraction to a divine form from the culture as represented in the Hindu culture. Does not mean that one need not use mantras at all. It is not an impediment to the practice of mantra sadhana. This is what I am trying to say here. Because you are not attracted to any divine form, do not think that you should not practice any mantras. Because I am not attracted to any divine form, I don't want to practice any mantras. That is not the right kind of thinking. You need not meditate on any form. You can directly go from the using the mantra. You can directly go into the meaning of the mantra, the subtle meaning, the philosophical meaning. See what clicks for you. So what basically is important while taking the mantra is, does the mantra suit you energetically? If the mantra's vibration pattern suits you energetically for that period of time in your life, it makes concentration at the subconscious level, at the deep level, at the prana level, integration of the mind and the prana becomes very, very easy. It's a fantastic tool. Also, it helps in so many ways. It opens you up to the higher intelligence. It opens your mind to the higher intelligence. It clears certain subtle blocks that are blocking our spiritual progress. It gives us protection. Mananat trayate iti mantraha. Mantra that helps you to cross over. Mantra also protects you while you chant it. It protects the whole chant. It creates a certain presence around you. The presence goes with you. You carry that presence with you everywhere you go. So it gives you a subtle protection. So mantra sadhana is very, very useful tool. It is not mandatory, but it is a very useful tool. And one need not turn away because one is not attracted to the various divine forms and the cultural forms. And also it is important for the gurus to not impose it simply because they want to run the show. This is one problem that I have noticed in organizations. The gurus who represent organization, they have this pressure to sustain the crowd. It is inevitable. No, you need to sustain the crowd. So the show has to go on, like as they say. The show has to go on. So because of that, unless you are a very exceptional person, the guru will say, do this, do that, keep you busy. Because if you are not busy in a sattvic context, you are going to get busy in a rajasic or a tamasic context. That is the explanation they give, which is good. But also, after a point, it becomes very restrictive. And one is always struggling. I have seen this happen to many people and to myself also. If one is more attuned to subtle things, it is better to encourage that and not force oneself, and in the part of the teacher not to force the student to be stuck with the forms, with the rituals, and with all the peripheral details for which the person does not have samskara. It is important to create some sattvic samskara, which can be created in lifestyle. It can be created in a few things, a few gestures. For example, doing namaskara to the guru, that's all right. But one need not be forced to go into an elaborate ritualistic puja when one is not cut out for that, and it creates a huge stress. I have seen these students of Agama Tantra and all that, they come and many of them don't have samskara, and they waste 4 years, 5 years, 6 years trying to learn all the steps and the mantras and the shlokas and everything. In that time, they could have done a lot of pranayama, dhyana, and other practices, and gain something more. It's a lot of time wasted. We don't have time. In this Kali Yuga, our lifespan is very less. We have so many distractions around. So there is no time to waste in all the peripheral stuff that does not give you, that is most of the time is only a struggle. And by the time you develop the samskara and you are all ready, you are already, ready to leave the body. So they will say you will continue in next life. It is a very roundabout approach. It is not required. So if you are not comfortable, if you belong to an organization or to a community where the teacher is telling you to do a lot of things, if you are not comfortable, don't force yourself. You can be polite, do some minimal things, and focus on what is really allowing you to develop the concentration. Focus on where you get the most concentration, most dedication, where there is a more natural emotional involvement. That's the kind of practices you can focus more and develop the intensity. What is important, especially in our times, is very quickly, without delay, we must develop that intense spiritual involvement. To develop that intensity inside, that fire inside, that passion, the spiritual passion has to develop, So it must be like if I'm going to sit and meditate now for half an hour, it should not feel like a chore. You must be looking forward to it. Suppose there is a blockbuster movie that you have been waiting for. It has come to the theater near you. You finally got some time and money and everything, and some friends to join you. You look forward to that evening, right? Like that, you should look forward to the sadhana time. So that should come. That is the passion. So see what practices will help you develop that. You are looking forward for your yoga session. You are looking forward for your japa session, for your meditation session. So I cannot wait to go and sit and meditate. It should be like that. And once you sit and meditate, you should flow into it. It should be a joy. And unless there is a strong physical need or any other need from your responsibilities, it must be a delight to continue to meditate, continue to do the practice. It's like you are reluctantly leaving the meditation seat and going for. You are reluctantly leaving the puja place. You are reluctantly leaving the stopping the japa. It must be like that. So the that passion, to generate that passion, is very, very important, because that is what is going to protect us from samsara. That is what is going. This passion is what is going. What we call as bhakti is what will protect us from our limbic system from getting hijacked by all the chaos that is around us. Everything around us is hunting for our limbic system. Limbic system is that rat brain, pressure principle inside us, hypothalamus, amygdala, and all that they say, right? So this limbic system, the instinctive part of us, doom scrolling, all the advertisements that get your attention. Basically, everybody wants to have a piece of your involvement, piece of your attention. So your attention is out there for sale, right? Your attention span, that bandwidth, is under attack. It's like the entire civilization, so-called civilization, and the high-tech life around us it's like all of them are waiting to install a parasite in your mind that will grab and thrive on a part of your attention span. If you really think that's how it is, attention parasite, it puts a hook in your mind, and then you're thinking about it, you dream about it, and then you want to go and buy it. So finally it's to make you click on something and buy something. Clickbait, they say, right? So that is exactly what it is doing. It is hijacking our limbic system. So mantra sadhana helps us to develop that, to reorient our limbic system towards a spiritual ideal, because of the integration of the mind and the prana. The flow of chitta and the flow of prana are brought together by the power of the mantra in a certain kind of a laya or an absorption, and that protects your limbic system from getting hijacked by all kinds of things. You will need more of that in the future, as the AI becomes the dominant force in the market. It becomes an inevitable thing that you will have to deal with. Everything comes with a limbic parasite. If I want to order food, if I want to order groceries, there are 10 ads hovering around that simple order. I just simply cannot order a packet of milk. When I am looking for milk, then there is some other ad popping. Then there is an insurance popping up. Something I have been discussing with my friend yesterday, the ad for that is popping. So it's like constant war for your attention. So what happens is this mantra sadhana, like how we discussed now, it will protect your limbic system from getting hijacked. So that helps you to maintain what we call as ekagrata, or 1 point. So do try mantra sadhana. Don't worry about divine forms, what you are not. See what you are. Don't worry about things you are not naturally attracted to. Focus on things that you are naturally attracted to. See if something clicks. Experiment a little bit. And it's okay to do some mantra shopping for some time. You don't have to. It will take some time. As you study, as you get involved, as you explore, it will take some time until you come and find that right person who will guide you. And the right dasha bhukti, they say in our horoscope, the right, your punya from your past life has to manifest at a certain point. When it comes, it will, that moment, the right guru will come for the initiation, and then from there it can take off, right? So, but to make an effort to explore a little bit, that's fine. So don't worry about, we need not impose the cultural elements of the spiritual knowledge tradition here. There are two things. There is the knowledge part and the cultural part. They support each other, definitely. But if you are not from the culture, you can take minimally what is helpful and don't have to force yourself into cultural integration. You are not part of a cult. True spirituality is not a cult. While a cult might have some elements of spirituality, a cult is mostly a burden. No? So you don't have to. It is not a cult. It is a wisdom tradition. There are some cultural factors that are helpful. We might take in what fits us and try a little bit. If it works, good. If it doesn't work, fine. Sometimes we will have to try for a little bit for the samskara to kick in. And we have to ask, is it mandatory or not mandatory? One of the usual things I used to annoy my gurus with when I was young is that I'll say, Guruji, is this compulsory or optional? This is one question that I used to annoy all my teachers with. Compulsory or optional? So if optional, I will have my freedom. If it is compulsory, I have Shraddha, so I will take it and I will try to implement it. Then I will try to negotiate. I feel like this, I feel like that. So what is your recommendation? Like, so you have to communicate and discuss. There are some difficulties and hesitations. You can always discuss. A teacher who is not ready to engage with your hesitations and rejections and difficulties is not a good teacher. So you will have to change the teacher to someone who helps you to deal with those questions. So you have to address those questions. You have questions, objections, you can bring it up. The teacher will address that and tell you why you need to do that. There is a rationale, please do that. Being a little bit skeptical and being a little bit independent in the sense of giving importance to how things gel with you or not, with your samskara or not, while staying in a healthy communication with the teacher, is a very good trait, and it does not disturb Shraddha, right? And most of us teachers now are not omniscient. We are not like a Trikala Jnanis. The moment you walk in, we see through your soul, we see all your past lives. Most of the 99.9% teachers are not like that. So it is a trial and error. They have a good hold of the methodology. There is some intuition. There is some kind of an understanding of the person who comes. And then we work with what we have. And then there is a grace that has to operate through the teacher. If the teacher is a vehicle of grace, the right guidance will come through that person. So obviously, this is how it works. So communication becomes very important. Back and forth communication with the teacher becomes very important in order to have an effective sadhana regime, to arrive at the effective sadhana regime. So do not burden yourself with cultural factors. At the same time, do not block yourself with the cultural factors. Let us have a healthy attitude of try and take it or not, kind of a healthy attitude, trial and error attitude, and an open mind to the cultural and the other aspects of the sadhana. And mantra sadhana has various levels to it, and one need not turn one's face away from mantra sadhana simply because it is associated with divine forms. The divine forms are only a psychological prop, and they are not mandatory. And there are various levels of meaning to the mantra. One can always go to the subtle forms, the philosophical meanings, etc., and benefit from the practice of mantra sadhana. Okay. Now, there is another question which I could not address. It was towards the end of the class. It is like this. While introducing, let it be introducing to the basic disciplines or introducing a person to the idea of moksha, to the knowledge of moksha, to know the truth of the real self, like the path of learning from the basic discipline to the ultimate truth. How to find the difference between one's delusion and one's clarity? Very good question. Is it possible to get confused even if one is studying this, but without accepting the power of ego? So there are two things here. A person, I will start with the second part. A person has studied a lot, studied for some time, with a good teacher, proper method, everything. Right? A scholar, a well-learned person. Now, let me put it like this. Can this person afford to underestimate the power of ego? Definitely not. Now, that is what differentiates a Shrotriya from a Brahmanishta. So if we see in Mundaka Upanishad, there is a sloka that says, Gurumeva bhigachet Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. Go to the Guru who is a Shrotriya and a Brahmanishta. Shrotriya is a learned person. Brahmanishta is a person who owns up that knowledge completely, who lives that knowledge. The person learned in Vedanta is a Shrotriya, and the person having learnt the Vedanta also lives the truth of the Vedanta is a Brahmanishta. So they say the best Guru is a Shrotriya and a Brahmanishta. The next best Guru is a Shrotriya. He has learned, but he may not be. Third best one is a Brahmanishta, but he is not learned. He somehow lives the truth by the power of grace or whatever, but he has not studied properly. That is the Uttama Madhyama Adama Guru. This is the standard thing that they say in the Shankara Advaita Parampara. Okay. Now, why a person can be learned and not be realized? Well read in all the scriptures, but one does not live the truth. Why? The only reason is ego, nothing else. One is not able to loosen up the ego and give up the pattern of self identification, which is the ego. That's all it is. When the ego is complete, when the ego structure is completely open to the pramana, which is Vedanta, which is knowledge, the ego cannot survive. So it is the openness of the ego to the knowledge is what realization is all about. If the ego structure is completely open to the knowledge has to operate and clear the ignorance once for all. It is because of the adamancy of the ego structure is why there are learned people who are not realized. Okay, so no matter in any stage of learning, it is important to not underestimate the power of ego. In fact, that is part of the learning. If we learn properly, even if the ego is not completely, even one is not completely free from the clutches of ego, at least one will become very objective about one's ego. Okay. Now that depends upon the level of sattva or rajoguna in the mind. If there is more rajoguna, the ego's force will be more dominant than the force of the knowledge. If there is more sattva guna, the force of sattva guna, the knowledge will be more dominant on the ego. You will have an ego issue, but you will be able to get objective about it very fast and become self-critical very fast, and you will be able to put it in its place and not act from the ego. Maybe you will take off and process it a little bit and come back. But you will still, in spite of feeling ego, you will still give priority and preference to the knowledge. You will still say that knowledge is valid and what conclusion the ego comes up is not valid. Right? So that objectivity will be there. So that much sattva is there, it is enough. One need not expect a person to be completely free of ego, but it is very important part of learning to never underestimate the power of ego. One example that we see is in Yoga Sutra. When there is the discussion on what is called as abhinivesha, the abhinivesha klesha, the 5 pain-causing afflictions in Yoga Sutra, in Sadhana Pada, it talks about avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So abhinivesha klesha, in the commentary, it says, in the sutra itself says, the abhinivesha, which is difficult to handle even for the learned. Even the learned find it difficult with this abhinivesha. They falter when it comes to abhinivesha. The survival, the clinging to life, sense of security, the desire to stay alive, that's abhinivesha, which is nothing but deha abhimana. My self-definition and identity based on the body. That is what is abhinivesha. Deha abhimana is abhinivesha, nothing else. So, that is a classic example where even the learned fail, where even the learned find it difficult, means knowledge need not be effective just by the fact that there is knowledge. That's what it means, right? And the entire Nishta that we are talking about here in this class, the whole concept of Nishta is to bridge the gap between knowledge and the projection of the ego, nothing else. So that's a very valid point, and it is very possible that one can get very confused because of the power of the ego. One's knowledge can get clouded, and sentiment and ego and habit patterns. One's knowledge can get clouded in the sense one will try to interpret the knowledge according to the demands of the ego. One will try to interpret that scripture. That is why they say Shastra is to be taught by a person who is of a predominant sattvic nature. And one thing that we see from our, from our tradition, when they talk about adhikari bheda is classifying people according to their aptitude of learning. Is this person the right person to be imparted with this knowledge? Vedanta is only for a person who has certain qualities. They say, Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi Shatka Sampatti, Mumukshutva. The one who has this fourfold qualification is the qualified student to study Vedanta. So if the fourfold qualification is not there, it is very likely that you will misuse Vedanta. The study of spiritual knowledge is not gathering of information. It is continuous self-transformation. That is why Asuras, there are a lot of Rakshasas today who are very, very learned in Vedas, much more than the Astika. Astika means those who are very devoted and who are traditional. There are a lot of Nastikas and Asuras. Like for example, there is one fellow called Zakir Naik. So that fellow can quote in and out of all the Vedic scriptures. He will tell chapter number, verse number and all that. But he is basically a Rakshasa, he's an Asura. He also knows. AI knows. Your chatbot, ChatGPT knows more Veda than you and me. Right? It can go and access everywhere. But that is not knowledge. No? And why this Zakir Naik quote? How does he quote? He quotes all the Vedas in order to justify his own cult. He twists the meaning in order to win gullible people in argument. Well, properly learned people will not go behind that, will not fall for that. But normal, common, gullible man who has not studied anything, he will be, wow, he has studied so much Vedas. He himself is saying, so it must be correct. He has studied so much. So studying a lot of Veda does not mean Veda and spiritual knowledge, and gathering a lot of information from spiritual literature does not make you actually learned. And it does not mean anything unless the ego is refined. The refinement of the ego and making it aligned with Sattva Guna, predominantly Sattvic, is something that should precede learning. That is why you will say in Ganapati Atharva Sirisham, Edat Atharva Sirisham, Asishyayana Deyam. Do not give this to one who is not a Shishya. In Bhagavad Gita also, do not teach this to the one who is not with the right discipline and the right temperament. Don't give this secret knowledge to everybody, Krishna tells, right? So why? Because it is very, very possible for the ego to hijack the knowledge and twist according to its own agenda. That is why anybody and everybody cannot be teacher. Just because you finished a post-graduation in Sanskrit and you attended a few courses does not make you a teacher. The person, the teacher is somebody who has sattvika buddhi. A sattvika buddhi is pramana buddhi. Pramana buddhi means the intellect and the ego that is completely in tune with the intended meaning of the knowledge revealed in the scriptures, in line with the tradition. That is why Sri Shankaracharya says, in one of his commentaries, he says, Asampradaya murkhavat apekshaniyaha. I have quoted this many times in our class. Very famous quote of Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Asampradaya Vidu means the one who is very learned, but one whose thinking is not in tune with the Sampradaya, one whose lifestyle and thinking is not in tune with and does not respect the Sampradaya, the tradition, who is not a full package, even if that person is very, very learned in all the Shastras, reject him like Murkhavat, reject him like as though he is an idiot, reject him like how you would reject a fool. Apekshaniya should be, you should reject that person, you should become indifferent to that person. And you know the example given for that is Lord Buddha. They call it as Pratama Malla Nyaya, right? Okay, if I want to defeat the best, if I want to become the best wrestler in the country, I don't have to go and fight everybody on the road. I have to defeat the current best wrestler. So if I defeat the current best wrestler, I become the best wrestler. Correct? So in the same way, Lord Buddha was considered as the king of yogis and praised as a great Mahatma by Shankaracharya himself. He was called as the king of yogis and all that. But he is not in line with the Sampradaya. Somehow he became instrumental in creating a Nastika Sampradaya that is against the Veda. So Buddha may tell a lot of things. He may be very learned. He may be enlightened. That doesn't matter. Reject him like he's a fool. For example, you know, we have Duryodhana. Duryodhana in Mahabharata says, classical example is Duryodhana in Mahabharata. He says, I know what is Dharma, knowledge, okay? He is well learned in Dharma because he also attended Gurukula along with Dhritarashtra and, along with Yudhishthira and all the other Pancha Pandavas and everybody else. He also attended the school, right? In school, they teach Dharma Shastra, everything for all the brahmacharis. Sandhya Vandana, Gayatri, everything is part of his life. Okay? He has the full Vedic lifestyle. Duryodhana. Janami Dharma. I know what is Dharma. Nachame Pravritti. I am not able to follow it. I am not able to involve in it. Janami Adharmam. I know what is wrong, what is Adharma. Nachame Nivritti. I am not able to pull myself back from it. This is classic example of ego overriding knowledge. Right? So we have these examples everywhere in the tradition, in all the scriptures, in everywhere there is an example of one person. This is the difference between Deva and Asura. Deva also has ego. Asuras also have ego. But Devas will always put the ego below knowledge. Knowledge always is above ego. Asuras will always put ego above knowledge. Both of them have knowledge. Ravana was a master in all the 64 arts. He knew all the 4 Vedas. He himself has some mantras to his credit. He is the son of a rishi. But still he is Asura. Why? Ego is more important than knowledge. This is what is Asura Pravritti. If you look at in Daiva Asura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga, there is a chapter in Bhagavad Gita called Daiva Asura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. If you look at that chapter, it very clearly talks about this point where ego overrides the knowledge. So please study that. You will have more deeper understanding of this subject. And now we come to the first part of the question. Learning from basic discipline to ultimate truth, how to find the difference between one's delusion and one's clarity. Yad yad acharati shreshtaha tadyad deva itaro janaha. That is the guiding principle. How the saints and sages and the exemplary personalities in the tradition have handled a similar situation in line with the scriptures. Right? That will help. Study of Puranas, for example, Ramayana, Rama Vigrahaman Dharmaha. Rama represents Dharma. So how Rama handled various conflicts, Valmiki Ramayana can help. Dharma Shastras. And there will be stories and the life of saints. So you will see how they have handled similar conflicts. When we read about the life of saintly people who are known as saintly people, not who are marketed as saintly people like Gandhi, I'm talking about proper traditional saintly people who had consistent lifestyle and not simply a large following. And those characters who are quoted in the stories in the Upanishads, the Puranas, and all that. So when we read them and when we listen to discourses from people who have gone through proper study, as we start getting exposed to these spiritual literature and life and saints and stories, etc., we will see how they have handled in a similar situation. For example, I told you, do not pray to divinities for getting things done. Kamye matistyajatam. Last class we discussed. I have read about the life of a Vaishnavite saint, I think Manavala Mamuligal, I think, in Kanchipuram. There was no food in the house or something like that. Sustained continuously for many days. There was not enough food and all that. And this person was constantly devoted for the temple and to serving his guru Ramanujacharya. And and all, so this man was very devoted and he was going serving the tradition. While his wife had to somehow make ends meet, and there was not a proper meal in the house. A lot of poverty. So poor woman, she went and talked to Vardaraja, that Vishnu in the temple. She went and complained to him and came back. And the Lord came in some other form and he solved the problem and went. And then this man comes home, he finds the problem is solved. Then in his intuition, he somehow understood. He said, did you go and disturb the god? Did you go and disturb the Vardhan? Vardhan is a very pet way of addressing the Lord Vishnu in the temple. So did you go and complain to him? That's why he has solved. Why are you going and disturbing the Lord for all these little useless, simple problems that we have? You don't eat for 3 days, it's a simple problem for it. So that's the level, why are you going and asking the Lord for all these things? Once you surrender, it's surrender. The Lord knows to take care. Why are you going and asking God for small little things there? He comes and says. So I see that. I see that example coming from the tradition. And then we have this exemplary personality. How they stayed devoted to the right conduct, even in the extreme crisis. You see that. Because that is the time when I am in a difficult situation, that exactly is the time where is the testing time to see if I am going to live according to my virtue or am I going to succumb to the pressure and compromise my values. That exactly is the time for that. So we have to take every challenge enthusiastically like a test for me to see if I am able to live up to my values and standards that I understand, or am I succumbing to the pressure and compromising, right? That's exactly what spiritual growth is about. So this is one way to check. Is my behavior in line with the behavior of the saints and sages and the seers in my tradition? Would my guru consider it as right? Comparing that with them, behavior in similar situations that saintly people had. That is one way that which we can do. Another is to check the commentaries. When we read commentaries and sub-commentaries, when we read scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, it is important to read them according to the commentaries and sub-commentaries. Right? The original Shankara Bhashyam, Ramanuja Bhashyam, Abhinava Gupta Bhashyam, whatever, Madhva Bhashyam. When it comes to conduct, for example, we can always, whatever is the sampradaya we are in, we check the main Acharya, his commentary and guidance, and then his immediate disciples who have given an elaboration on that. So those who have lived the tradition, right? How they explain the principle, and then just we compare what we think with what is there. That is called pramana buddhi. What is there is right. What is in my head, I should always put a question mark. And what I feel is meaningless. This is one mantra that I always have for myself, and I always tell for all the students is, what I feel is meaningless. Always tell yourself. What I feel is a result of all my conditioning based on my experiences, my pleasure principle, my likes and dislikes. That is what results in what I feel. What I feel should not be ignored. What I feel needs to be understood, empathized, and processed in a healthy way, according to the right methods, so that I am not in too much conflict or stress, and my mind is in a serene state, chitta prasadam. It is required. But what I feel does not decide what I must do. What I must do is decided by right knowledge. Right knowledge, there are only three: Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Shastra. The five senses, the sensory knowledge, the input, empirical knowledge, then proper scientific logical understanding, and above that, the knowledge from the tradition and the traditional interpretation of the scripture, Shastra Pramana. So sometimes Shastra Pramana overrides the scientific Pramana. Onion, for example, onion is good for health. Garlic is good for health. Shastra Pramana, Kalanjam na Bakshet. Dharma Shastra says, don't eat onion, garlic. Suppose if I am a Vedic Pandit, I cannot go with scientific data. I have to go with my Shastras, Dharma Shastras data. Of course, there is adhikar. A rule is given for a person. Desha Kala Patra. A place, the right time, and for the right person, there is a rule. It is not one universal rule for everybody. If a rule applies to me according to Shastra, then I give prominence to Shastra over science and over my sensory perception. Provided there is no big medical emergency. So then there are exceptions. There are exceptional situations. I have to see, am I in an exceptional? There are some concessions given for exceptional situations. It's called apat kala dharma. It is called. Okay. So this compromise is okay for an exceptional dangerous situation where I have to save a life or whatever. There, I should take care not to make that exceptional situation my everyday rule. On exceptional days, where I am sick or whatever, it is okay to do my mantra while I am lying in bed. Because I am sick, I am having heavy fever, I am not able to get up. It is okay to remember one's mantra while in the bed itself. Now that cannot become my everyday rule. Every day I chant, I do my japa only in the bed. That's not okay. For everyday normal observance, there is a rule. For exceptional situations, there is a rule. So, one's delusion, one's clarity, the difference is always understood if one is devoted to the practice of Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is not self-analysis. Swadhyaya is study, proper study in keeping with the traditional methodology under the guidance of qualified people, qualified scholars. That is Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means self-study. You analyze your own thoughts. No, that is wrong interpretation. That is not. It's not Swadhyaya. It is Su plus A plus Adhyaya. And it is in keeping with, proper, it comes in the meaning of proper study. It is not, and also Swaveda. Swaveda means Swadharma, Swaveda. I have to study my own Veda. So that is why if you see the commentary for Swadhyaya, not a single traditional commentary will say self-analysis. All the traditional commentaries will say, no matter from which sampradaya, all the commentaries will say Swadhyaya means. That is why we have, in all the commentaries will say chanting of mantras, pure mantras, sattvic mantras, and studying of the moksha literature. That is what is Swadhyaya. For a person who is in a renunciant lifestyle, Swadhyaya can also mean, doing your adhyayanam of your Veda and other things. If you are coming under the ritualistic, religion, if you are a Brahmin and you have certain ritualistic religious commitments, that also comes under Swadhyaya. Basically, scriptural study. That is what Swadhyaya. Study of scripture according to the method prescribed by the tradition and your teacher. That is Swadhyaya. Not studying whatever you want or looking at your own thoughts. That is not Swadhyaya. That is also good. Self-analysis is good, but that is not meant. That is not what is meant in the word Swadhyaya. And difference between delusion and clarity becomes better and better. The clarity about one's clarity, that gets better by the practice of Swadhyaya. Yeah. Swadhyaya goes on. In all the steps, there is Swadhyaya. Even for a brahmachari, there is Swadhyaya. Pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. Do not, compromise Swadhyaya and Pravachana, learning and teaching. And even for sannyasis, there is Swadhyaya. And there is Shravana Manana Nityasana. So Shastra Shravanam is very important. Satsanga is important. That's why in Sadhana Panchakam he says, when you leave the house, what is the first thing he says? Sangat Satsu Vidhiyatam. May you seek the company of the wise ones, of the ones who are devoted to the truth. Then you practice all your sadhanas. Bhagavataha Bhakti Dridadiyata. Develop the Shantyadi Parichiyadam. Develop the sattvic qualities like Shamadama, etc. Then you take sannyasa. Karmasu Samchita. Then you go to the teacher who will teach you Vedanta. Sadvidvan Upasatyata. Serve him and learn from him. All that comes. Okay. So, Swadhyaya is the defining support that will keep us on track and not allow the delusion to take over our decision making. Okay, I hope I answered the question. So, any further questions you can ask on this, what we discussed, or if you are waiting with a question, please post the question. We have 3 minutes. I can extend another 5 minutes. If you are going to type a question, just type Om in the chat. I know the question is coming, then I will wait. So I guess no more questions. Okay. So we will meet in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavadishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you very much. Have a nice week. May every activity empower your sadhana.